What if I told you that one of the most significant energy policy shifts in decades is happening right now, but almost everyone is missing the real story beneath the surface? Today on Logic Lens, we're going to use our clear framework to expose the logical architecture behind President Trump's recent executive orders on nuclear energy. What you're about to see will completely change how you understand political communication. Welcome to Logic Lens, where we dissect viral content to reveal the hidden logical frameworks that shape our understanding. For those new to the channel, I'm your host, and each Monday, we take trending content and apply our framing logic process to uncover what's really happening beneath the surface. By the end of this video, you'll see exactly how high-level communication is structured to lead you towards specific conclusions, and how to recognize when you're being guided there. Today, we're analyzing President Trump's recent signing of executive orders related to nuclear energy. This White House event has generated significant buzz, with over 190,000 views. But the logical structure beneath this seemingly straightforward policy announcement reveals fascinating patterns that most viewers completely miss. But before we dive in, let me share something personal. Last month, I found myself in a heated discussion about energy policy with a friend. We both had strong opinions, but we were talking past each other. It wasn't until I stepped back and analyzed the logical structure of our arguments that I realized we were using completely different definitions of energy security. This is exactly what we'll be doing today, creating an emotion logic bridge by recognizing how our personal reactions to content can cloud our logical analysis. Let's begin our clear framework analysis. See conclusion. What are the main claims being made in this content? The central claim of this White House event is that the United States needs to dramatically expand its nuclear energy capacity through regulatory reform to achieve energy dominance. This is framed as essential for three interconnected reasons: national security, economic competitiveness, and technological leadership, particularly in artificial intelligence. President Trump makes several specific subclaims throughout the event. Nuclear energy is now very safe and has overcome historical safety concerns. Overregulation has stifled American nuclear innovation for decades. Nuclear power is essential for powering AI development and winning the AI arms race against China. Small modular nuclear reactors represent a major technological opportunity. Energy independence is directly linked to national security. The executive orders will quadruple nuclear power production in 25 years. What's fascinating here is what logic experts immediately notice. The conclusion is presented first, before any premises or evidence. This is a classic persuasion technique called front-loading that primes the audience to interpret all following information as support for the pre-established conclusion. L. Labels. How are key terms and concepts defined and used? This is where things get interesting, and most viewers miss crucial definitional shifts. Throughout the presentation, several key terms are used in specialized ways that dramatically affect the logical structure. Energy dominance. This term appears repeatedly, but is never precisely defined. It shifts between meaning energy independence, global market leadership, and geopolitical leverage. This definitional flexibility allows different audience segments to interpret it in ways that align with their priorities. Overregulation, characterized as the primary obstacle to nuclear development, but without specific regulatory examples until Joe Dominguez provides the $35 million site analysis example. This creates a presumptive framing that regulation itself, rather than particular regulations, is inherently problematic. Small modular nuclear, presented as a revolutionary new technology, though the concept has existed for decades. The label creates a perception of innovation while distinguishing it from traditional nuclear plants that have faced public resistance. Nuclear security. This term undergoes interesting conflation, sometimes referring to physical safety of plants, sometimes to energy supply security, and other times to national security more broadly. But pause right here and see if you can identify one more critical label manipulation before I reveal it. Did you catch it? It's how AI is used throughout the presentation. The term shifts between referring to artificial intelligence as a technology and as a competitive domain, AI arms race. This subtle shift transforms AI from a technological tool to a geopolitical battleground, elevating the perceived stakes and urgency. E-evidence: what premises and supporting evidence are presented? Now let's examine the evidence offered to support these claims. Logic experts immediately notice something striking. The presentation is remarkably light on specific data points or empirical evidence. Instead, it relies heavily on authority figures. CEO testimonials serve as the primary evidence, with representatives from Constellation Energy, Oklo, and General Matter all reinforcing the central claims. Historical references: vague references to America's past nuclear leadership and regulatory history. Analogies: comparing U.S. nuclear regulation unfavorably to France's approach. Hypothetical scenarios: descriptions of future benefits without statistical backing. Personal anecdotes: Trump references his uncle who was a great nuclear person years ago. The most specific evidence provided is the claim that only 2 new commercial reactors have come online since 1978. The statement that a golf ball of uranium metals contains enough energy to power a person's entire life. The reference to $35 million regulatory costs for site analysis at locations that already have reactors. Take a screenshot of our logic X-ray right now, because this visualization reveals something fascinating about the structure. Notice how the evidence branches primarily from authority rather than data. This is not inherently invalid, but it's a specific type of argument structure that relies heavily on ethos, credibility, over logos, logical reasoning. Assessment: how sound is the reasoning structure? Let's assess the quality of reasoning. Our logic X-ray reveals several significant patterns. False dichotomy fallacy: the presentation repeatedly frames the issue as a binary choice between overregulation and energy dominance, ignoring potential middle paths that maintain necessary safety protocols while addressing legitimate regulatory inefficiencies. Appeal to novelty: the reasoning assumes that newer nuclear technology is inherently better without establishing the specific improvements or addressing potential new risks. Hasty generalization: the example of $35 million for site analysis is presented as representative of all nuclear regulation without establishing its typicality. Post hoc ergo propter hoc: the reasoning attributes the decline in new reactor construction entirely to regulation without considering other factors like economic conditions, alternative energy sources, or public sentiment. Appeal to fear: the AI arms race framing creates urgency through fear of Chinese dominance rather than through positive benefits alone. What most people miss is a subtle but crucial logical maneuver: the circular reasoning regarding safety. The executive orders aim to reduce regulation to expand nuclear power, while simultaneously claiming nuclear is now safe. But that safety is partly a product of the regulations being targeted. This creates a potential logical inconsistency that's never addressed. At the logic level 3 scale, we also identify a modus ponens structure that looks like this. P1. If America wants to win the AI arms race, it needs vast amounts of reliable energy. P2. Nuclear energy provides vast amounts of reliable energy. P3. Regulations inhibit nuclear energy development. C1. Therefore, regulations inhibit America's ability to win the AI arms race. C2. Therefore, reducing regulations will help America win the AI arms race. This syllogism appears valid formally, but relies on unstated premises about the exclusive necessity of nuclear energy for AI development. Our results: what is the overall logical strength? After applying our logic X-ray to dissect the argument structure, we can determine that the overall logical framework has moderate strength with significant weaknesses. While the basic premise that streamlining efficient regulation could benefit nuclear development is logically sound, the argument suffers from several vulnerabilities. Evidence gap: Claims about safety improvements and regulatory burden are asserted more than proven. Definition ambiguity. Key terms shift meanings throughout the presentation. Alternative explanation neglect. Other factors affecting nuclear development are not addressed. Quantification absence. Few specific metrics or targets are provided for measuring success. The most logically robust element is the connection between energy capacity and computational needs for AI development, which aligns with established technical understanding of data center requirements. But wait until you see what happens next, because this entire presentation contains a fascinating meta-level framing technique that most viewers completely miss. The event itself is structured as a logical proof, with each executive order serving as a premise building toward the conclusion of energy dominance. This structure mirrors classical rhetorical formats, but with a modern media-aware adaptation. Now, let's apply our logic X-ray visualization to reveal the deeper structure. If we map the flow of reasoning, we see something fascinating: a hub-and-spoke model where multiple separate arguments, national security, economic opportunity, technological leadership, all converge on the same conclusion despite having limited logical connection to each other. This creates redundancy. If one argument fails, others still support the conclusion. Let's examine the key logical fallacies in more detail. Appeal to authority. The presence of industry CEOs creates an impression of consensus without addressing potential conflicts of interest. Logic experts know to evaluate the credibility of authorities, not merely their presence. Red herring. The discussion shifts to European Union trade policy and Apple manufacturing midway through, distracting from critical examination of the nuclear policy claims. Bandwagon appeal. References to tremendous executive orders and historic actions create pressure to accept the conclusion based on implied consensus rather than evidence. Begging the question, the fundamental premise that regulatory speed should be prioritized over other factors assumes the conclusion it's trying to prove. Non sequitur. The logical connection between nuclear energy and winning a technological race with China isn't fully established beyond assertion. Pause and predict. Can you identify another logical fallacy in this presentation that I haven't mentioned yet? Think about it before I continue. If you identified the false cause fallacy, congratulations. The presentation attributes America's loss of nuclear leadership entirely to regulation without establishing that causal relationship conclusively. Other factors like economic shifts, alternative energy development, and changing global markets are not addressed. For viewers at logic level 4 and above, you'll also recognize the subtle use of what logicians call modal equivocation, where statements about possibility can be safe shift imperceptibly to statements about actuality is safe, without acknowledging the difference. Now for the practical takeaways you can apply to analyze similar content. Identify definitional shifts. Notice when key terms change meaning throughout a presentation, as this often disguises logical gaps. Question authority evidence. When expertise is the primary evidence, evaluate potential conflicts of interest and representativeness. Seek missing alternatives. Complex policy issues rarely have binary solutions. Look for missing middle options. Map conclusion placement. Note whether conclusions precede evidence, persuasion-focused, or follow evidence, reasoning-focused. Distinguish assertion from evidence. Claims about safety, efficiency, or benefits require support beyond repetition. The most powerful technique you can apply from today's analysis is what I call premise hunting. When confronted with a policy argument, explicitly identify the unstated premises required for the argument to work. In this case, the unstated premises include: current regulations have no valid safety purpose. Economic benefits outweigh potential risks. Private industry incentives align with public interest. Technology has solved historical safety concerns. By making these premises explicit, you can more effectively evaluate the argument's strength. If you found this analysis valuable, screenshot our logic framework summary and share it with someone who's interested in energy policy or critical thinking. This is exactly the type of structured analysis that helps cut through rhetorical techniques to evaluate arguments on their merits. What makes this content particularly interesting is how it blends policy discussion with persuasive techniques. If you enjoyed this breakdown, you'll definitely want to check out our Wednesday video, where we'll focus specifically on the logical structure of regulatory reform arguments across different administrations. We'll compare how presidents from both parties have framed similar issues using surprisingly similar logical frameworks. And on Friday, our deep dive will examine the specific AI arms race framing and how technological competition narratives affect policy reasoning across domains beyond energy. Before you go, take a moment to like this video if you found the logic X-ray visualization helpful. I'm constantly refining this technique based on your feedback. And if you're new here, subscribe to join our community of critical thinkers who are learning to see beyond surface level content. In the comments, I'd love to know, what unstated premise in this presentation do you think deserves the most scrutiny? Is it the assumption about nuclear safety improvements, the regulatory burden claims, or the connection to AI development? Your insights help shape our collective understanding. Remember, in a world of increasingly sophisticated communication, your ability to dissect logical structures isn't just an academic skill. It's essential for making informed decisions in every aspect of life. Until Wednesday, this is Logic Lens, helping you see what others miss. And as always, keep your logic clear and your reasoning clearer.